Good morning, afternoon, or evening. This is Lauren with the.berry.sweet.post. This is the first episode of the Berry Sweet Post podcast. And I'm kind of just hoping to give you listeners an outline, talk about what this podcast is, what it's going to be, stuff like that. But before I get into that, I wanted to introduce myself a little bit and talk about why I wanted to start a podcast. My name is Lauren, as I said earlier. I'm obviously not going to be sharing too much because it's just a personal choice that I've made. Just very basic stuff. I started this podcast because I found myself kind of just bored having, nothing to do, and my hobbies kind of got sort of boring. I'm sure that's not an original experience. This podcast will sort of be kind of just what I want it to be every week. I will feature different family, different friends, different people in my life. Whoever I have on that week, I'll kind of base the episode off of them or what we like to talk about. Some days it will just be me. But again, it doesn't have, I don't know if I said this already, I don't know why I said again, but it doesn't have a specific outline or a continuous theme, really. It's kind of just a fun little podcast that you can listen to while you drive, cook, clean, stuff like that. But this being the first episode, I wanted to talk about podcasts in general. So I personally love podcasts. People either, really love podcasts, or they're kind of like, or they just don't like them. And I feel like I'm in between the group of and really loving them. I have a few that I listen to periodically, and I think it's just a really fun concept to just, talk. Like, I'm not a super chatty person, but if it's something I'm passionate about or something I know somebody else is passionate about, I love to talk about it. So I'm very excited to have different people in my life on this podcast to just hopefully have fun with listeners. And I hope that gets through, because I would like to spread joy and, give some fun to the world. But more about podcasts themselves. I feel like you learn a lot from a podcast, because depending on the type of podcast that you're listening to, you learn about crime, you learn about medical history, you learn about just so many different things, and you can choose who you want to listen to. And there's just so many different podcasts on so many different topics. And I think it's just really a very cool thing to have a podcast, to listen to a podcast. Just, I think they're really cool. I think they're a great time. So that's also part of the reason why I started this one. By the way, it took me forever to come up with a name for this thing, but I ended up with Berry Sweet Post. I like it, I wanted it to seem kind of like a weekly news report kind of deal, even though I'm not going to be reporting on anything like, continuously or following a real theme like I stated earlier. But I wanted it to seem just very like cute, lighthearted kind of thing, because that's what it'll be, I mean, occasionally I might go over a case, some sort of case, with my one friend. Her name is Naya, who loves stuff like that. We enjoy that together. So that's an example of kind of what to expect, I suppose. I'm looking at my recording time, and it's only been like 5 minutes, and it's kind of dawning on me like right now just how much work it must be to have those hour-long podcast episodes, those, really long ones. I respect those people because it does take so much preparation, so much time. Actually, my cousin started a podcast, and I'm sure he'll be on this sooner than later. He loves to talk as well. And he started one, and he put so much work into it, asking people to come on to the podcast, finding ideas. He's very creative, so I doubt it was hard for him to find an idea. But yeah, just so much respect for, podcast creators and podcast listeners as well. I mean, it's not a small community, but it's definitely a close-knit community, I feel. Even spreading across, someone might like a murder podcast, but someone else might like a crafting podcast. But either way, they have that in common, that they like podcasts, and I think that that's a very cool thing. The next thing I wanted to discuss is kind of how this will go. You won't be seeing my face every episode. You will see it occasionally, and that's not because I'm, sensitive to showing my face on the internet. That's fine with me, but It's just, some days you don't feel like it, and I'm sure that will be agreed upon for sure. So sometimes it'll be a picture, sometimes it'll be me. I'm hoping to put out an episode every week, but of course, life gets in the way sometimes, so if I can't, I will put a quick video out saying there won't be an episode this week, and I might explain why, I might not, it depends on what's going on in my life. I'll probably do some special episodes that'll be longer or on a specific topic that's trending or something like that. So that's essentially the gist of how the podcast is going to go and why I created it and all. So now getting back into about me a little bit, just so you kind of know who you're listening to. I'll say it for a third time. My name is Lauren. I'm 18. I enjoy a lot of different things: podcasts, books, shows, movies, games. Who knows, one day I might make an episode talking about all of my interests, whatever pops into my head in that moment. That would be honestly a pretty fun episode. This is probably one of the shortest episodes that you're going to get. I was mostly just talking about how it's going to go, who I am, kind of stuff like that. And there wasn't too much to talk about there. So hopefully the next one will be a bit longer, more entertaining. So that about wraps it up for this week. Thank you for listening. And until next week, this was Lauren with the Berry Sweet Post. Bye-bye. Thank you.